Imagine if one country could print money and the entire world was forced to use it. Every country, every oil trade, every major global transaction. Now imagine that country could buy real goods, real oil, real resources, using money it created out of thin air. That sounds impossible, but for the last 50 years, that is almost exactly how the global economy has worked. And the system that makes it possible has a name: the petrodollar system. Most people have never heard of it, but it quietly explains why the United States still holds enormous economic power, even while carrying over $34 trillion in debt. To understand why the U.S. is so powerful financially, you have to understand oil, and more importantly, how oil gets paid for. Here is the strange thing about the modern world. Almost every country trades with each other. Oil moves from the Middle East to Asia. Manufactured goods move from China to Europe. Food moves from South America to Africa. But most of these transactions are priced in just one currency: the US dollar. If Japan wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, it usually pays in dollars. If India imports crude oil, it usually pays in dollars. If Germany buys energy, metals, or commodities, the price is usually set in dollars. Which raises a strange question. Why does the entire world use the currency of one country to run global trade? The answer goes back to a deal made in the 1970s that reshaped the global economy forever. To understand the petrodollar, we have to go back a little further. After World War II, the global financial system was built around something called Bretton Woods. Under that system, the US dollar was backed by gold. Other currencies were tied to the dollar. But in 1971, President Nixon ended the gold standard. The dollar was no longer backed by gold. Suddenly, the world had a problem. If the dollar was not backed by gold, why should anyone trust it? Why should countries continue using it for global trade? For a moment, it looked like the dollar might lose its global dominance. But then something very interesting happened. In the mid-1970s, the United States made a strategic deal with Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter at the time. The deal was simple, but incredibly powerful. Saudi Arabia would sell its oil exclusively in US dollars. In exchange, the United States would provide military protection, weapons, and political support. Soon after, other OPEC countries followed the same system. And just like that, a new global rule was created. If you want to buy oil, you need US dollars. And since oil is the most important commodity in the world, every country suddenly needed a supply of dollars. This created a massive global demand for the US currency. Countries began storing dollars in their central banks. They bought US Treasury bonds. They used dollars for trade, reserves, and financial stability. This system became known as the petrodollar system, and it gave the United States something economists call an exorbitant privilege. Because now the US could print dollars, and the rest of the world would still need them. This created a powerful financial advantage. When the US government spends more money than it collects in taxes, it runs a deficit. Normally, that would be a huge problem. But because the entire world needs dollars, foreign governments and investors buy US debt. They purchase treasury bonds, which helps finance America's spending. In simple terms, the world helps fund the US government. And as long as global trade keeps running through the dollar system, that demand remains strong. This is why the US can carry massive national debt while still maintaining financial stability. But the petrodollar system does something else too. It gives the United States enormous geopolitical influence. Because when the global financial system runs through your currency, you gain control over the pipes of international finance. Sanctions, banking access, international payments, all of it becomes easier to influence. That power has shaped global politics for decades. But today, something is changing. Several countries are starting to question the dollar system. China is promoting trade in its own currency, the yuan. Russia has shifted many energy deals away from the dollar. And the BRICS alliance has openly discussed building alternatives to the dollar-based system. Even some oil producers have begun accepting different currencies for certain deals. None of this means the dollar will disappear tomorrow. Far from it. The dollar is still the most trusted and liquid currency in the world. But the global financial system is slowly evolving. And the petrodollar system, once unquestioned, is now being debated more openly than ever before. So here is the question I want you to think about. If the global oil market eventually moves away from the dollar, what happens to U.S. economic power? Does the dollar remain the center of the global economy? Or does the world slowly build a new financial system around multiple currencies? Because the answer to that question could shape the next 50 years of global finance. And I want to know what you think. Do you believe the petrodollar system will survive? Or do you think countries like China and the BRICS alliance will eventually break it? Tell me in the comments. I read every one. And if you want to understand how the US dollar became the most powerful currency in history, make sure to watch the next video, because the story gets even more interesting from here.